There are ways, so for basic metal finishing, I guess I can do that really quick. So a couple things, tools that you might not be familiar with, if you're looking for more excuses to buy more tools. Is this a good place for the tools right there? All right. So, so this is a basic file, and you could go in even while it's spinning and carefully sort of file down and round over the edge of the metal and file that down. This is more of a scraper, so you can go through, it's almost like a knife for metal that you can go through and scrape that. And then this is specifically made for the sheet metal industry, and this is a deburring tool. So you, again, it's kind of, you can just scrape it along the edge of the metal, and it'll take off just a little bit. I kind of chamfer it on either side, so then it'll soften it. But they'll use these in sheet metal shops too. So that's kind of super basic metalworking. I do want to say, anyone that wants to get into this, or you're thinking of trying it out or anything, you know, please, I would love to help facilitate that. So definitely email me, and I can give you, I could spend all night just talking about basic metalworking stuff, which you're probably not so interested in. So that's a couple different ways of addressing the edges. I think rolled edges are a really elegant solution to it, and it's kind of a fun challenge and everything. So I'll get into that in a bit. Any other basic things before I start into some other techniques? Yeah?
Yeah, is the shape of the metal determined by the shape of the wood you have underneath it?
It can be. So if you wanted to the question was, is the shape of this metal determined by this wooden chuck or the positive form underneath it? So if you wanted to make many of the same thing, then yes. You can lay the metal all the way down to the form of the chuck, and they will, depending on your tolerances, they'll be pretty close. But you don't have to do that. Probably 90% of the spinning that anyone is doing is out on air. There's a feeling that it's like, oh, well, I have to lay all the metal up against the wood so it doesn't crumple up or something like that. As long as you have proper spinning technique, it shouldn't wrinkle up on you. Usually what will happen while you're spinning, the biggest mistake, particularly when I was starting out, and I have a box of crumpled spinnings that I recycled, is you slip and you run over the edge, and it's no longer perpendicular to the axis of rotation, and it crinkles up. So that just happens just because you're not used to all the tools and technique and things. So, but you can if you wanted to make many of the same thing. That's kind of where this came from. And it really hasn't changed too much in hundreds of years of people doing it. As you're familiar with basic wood turning, those techniques and tools are pretty similar how they've been. Yeah, another one.
Lubrication. How often do you lubricate?
So with aluminum, it tends to get a little grabby. So if I notice that the tool isn't gliding along it really nicely, then I'll put more of the paste wax on there. But I try to minimize how much I put on there because I don't like it spraying all over my face shield, spraying all over my shop and everything. So it's kind of what works. And I would recommend starting with paste wax just so you don't have like axle grease contaminating your shop and getting all over your lathe and things like that. But it's kind of a feel thing. You just want the tool gliding smoothly across because the aluminum will grab onto the steel. This does heat up from the friction and everything, and it'll kind of gall onto the metal and create little scratches into it and things like that. Great questions. Yeah?
Is Crown Tools over in England still making the turning tools?
Ooh, I don't know. I did, not to be a commercial for different tool suppliers, but there is a U.S. company that makes wheel tools where I have an example that I'll talk about in a little bit, that I have that roller blade wheel that I just kind of threw together on my own. But scissor tools or wheel tools are what a lot of production metal spinners use, and they're really amazing, lovely tools where you have one that it works like scissors like this, and it has a spinning wheel at the end, and it's just like, compared to the amount of force that it takes me to do this, it's just like a walk in the park. However, a set of those tools is like $1,000, which is why I don't have one. But I do have information about that tool supplier that's right there as far as U.S. maker of them.
Can you feel when you're getting too thin? You're stretching that metal as you peel it over.
Well, ideally, actually, So I thin the metal and distort it on purpose, particularly when I have those perforated spinnings, because I want to distort it on purpose. Ideally, just with like throwing good ceramics on a pottery wheel, you want to maintain uniform wall thickness. So if you're spinning absolutely correctly, when you spin this way and then you backspin it again, the thickness of the metal should remain uniform. Since I don't spin every day, I'm honestly not that good. My sort of rim tends to thicken up a little bit, and at the biggest points of stress, I will have sort of thinner. And it's oddly similar to doing like thin wall wood turnings, where it's kind of a feel thing, you know? And it's like, oh, I think I'm getting thin, crunch, and it, you know, breaks apart, and you're like, oh, I guess that was too thin. So yeah, it'll tend to tear about a half to 3/4 of the way up is where the greatest stress on the metal is for the longest period of time. It's just a practice thing, and you know, you can recycle the aluminum, get a little money from the scrapyard, I guess. But you're going to go through, as you're practicing, you're going to get a feel of it and go through a lot of it, which is why I recommend starting with aluminum. I know that pewter does work very differently from aluminum, and you don't have to anneal it. In fact, it work softens. But pewter is a whole lot more expensive than aluminum. So until you get the hang of it, I think aluminum is a great thing to start with. All right, cool. Up for a couple more techniques here. So what I'm going to do, if you remember that little candle votive thing, so I'm going to show reverse or back spinning. So I'm going to peel it back down. Oh, crazy, getting crazy here. And then assuming I don't stretch it and distort it too much, then I'm also going to roll that lip there. So you do have to change, so I wanted to leave a little bit here so I can still get at it. And it will unroll itself a bit. So, so I had to spin a little bit too far, and then I want to roll it, spin it back enough where this little candle cup will float above the surface of the table. So if you just remember that little kind of candle cup I was passing around that comes up, has a little cup, comes down, and then has the little rolled lip. So we'll get this going again. And now I have to lubricate the other side of the metal. And you're constantly sort of readjusting your tool rest, just like with turning. But this is not typical. You won't see this as much. I just wanted to like show you guys kind of something interesting. And you want to maintain the rim. So sometimes it can really stretch out and distort, as it just did, because, you know, anything in a demo that can go wrong will. Hey! Someone was asking about getting too thin. So once you have these wrinkles, so of course I did that on purpose so you won't feel bad when you do it yourself, right? When you have these wrinkles, yes, you can anneal it again and you can kind of spin them back out. And yes, if this was like silver, I would really work hard to rescue this piece, but it's just aluminum. And so you saw how quickly it was to spin one up, so I'm not going to worry about it. But these ridges always kind of remain in the structure of the metal just a little bit, like even with annealing it, it keeps a little bit of a memory of it. So either I'll do that on purpose and force it too much, and then you'll see some wrinkled edge kind of experiments there. And they are semi-regular, but it's, for anyone that knows metal spinning knows that like, oh, yeah, I know that. I've done like 100 of those. So it has a little bit of wax on it, but it's not too greasy. But I'll just throw another one up on there.
You're not using a back stick?
I don't. So there's another way, particularly as you get into thinner spinnings, or if you see videos online and everything, for production when they're doing, particularly when they get into thinner brass, you'll have a back supporting stick and then a front spinning tool, and you can support the metal as you're putting the pressure on it. I don't do that as much in my own work because I'm doing kind of one-of-a-kind stuff and not doing high production. And also, it just, as far as demos for like recruiting people to try it out, it starts looking more intimidating because you're like doing all this stuff and patting your head and hopping on, you know, like it gets more complex. So I was trying to kind of simplify this as much as possible. So again, you can, with centering it, you can take a stick in there while it's spinning around and sort of push it around. I don't do sort of, getting used to another lathe. I just use the tool rest to kind of get it close, because you can always trim the edge of the aluminum and get it kind of close. So this is what I set up before the demo just to save time, but we'll just do another one. I didn't have any wrinkles at SWAT. It was really funny. Yeah. I actually, if you can get over your own ego, like when I'm teaching metals at UNT and everything, I actually like things to go wrong, because it's more likely what's going to happen for people trying it out, and you learn a lot more from it. So I try not to be too self-conscious about it. So that's centered enough for what we're doing. I'll just start over from the beginning so you can see it real quick. And so I do want to get it seated down there. Make sure that it's not going anywhere. Kind of bring that one in a little bit more to hold it in place. So you can also see where it gets really shiny. That's more of the wax coming off of it, and it's just the burnished metal of the steel rubbing against the aluminum. And I'm also trying to watch the curvature of the metal. So just like with wood turning, you're looking at the negative space and seeing a smooth curvature there. So that's probably good enough. Now you might, I'm not sure if you can see, but as you're pushing on the metal slightly unevenly, the rim will distort off center a little bit. So you can see right now that there's, I mean, I think all of your guys' vision is really attuned when anything isn't exactly centered on the axis, that like, oh, that's out a little bit. So you can sort of half soften the metal by trimming that edge, because a lot of the tension of the metal is going out to that edge, which is what's both keeping it together from crinkling, but also is making it a little bit harder to push on. So I'm going to trim a little bit. It's kind of a loud and obnoxious thing, but I just want to show you that it can be done with wood turning tools and everything else. So what I'm going to do is, normally in my own shop, I would just trim it, and it's sort of, it's like a screaming can opener. But what I'll do is I'll just like keep my gloved hand on the metal. That should cut down on that a little bit. But I did want to show you trimming a little bit, just so it's nothing to be. Actually, we can get back into the wood turning land of comfort. So really, there's all sorts of different trimming tools. This is just like a large machining lathe. Right here is good. Sorry, I'm horrible for the cameraman. But that's just a large lathe tool that's set into a handle. I picked this up at a flea market or something like that. So that'll work. I also wanted to show you that this is just a basic turning tool that I use, that you guys can, you already have these tools. So to cut down on the vibration of it, normally I wouldn't put my finger against it, but I just wanted to. So that's not so bad, right? And this will actually soften. It's kind of like half annealing it. But it does scream a little bit more if I kind of take my finger off of it. but I will warn you guys as you get into this that rolling that edge, I don't do it a ton on my pieces because a lot of times I'm putting the metal with other parts or putting the metal to itself. So I don't roll a ton of edges, but if you try this on your own and you wrinkle a whole bunch of them, or if I end up wrinkling this one right now, don't feel bad. So couple tools to do this, and again, there's all different ways that you'll see in some of those books. A lot of really great old pewter working books have a lot about metal spinning in it, so they have some great tips. But when you take this rim from perpendicular to the axis and bring it parallel to the axis, it doesn't like that and it wants to crinkle all up. So this is kind of one of the trickier things with spinning, but I don't know, I'm feeling lucky, so I'm going to go for it. One of the things that I found, the way that I like to work that's really helpful is, again, when I picked up a set of spinning tools, there were these bent jaw polished pliers that are really good where you can just go in, grab the metal, and pull it around. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's better than just doing it with your fingers. So that'll start it, and then there's another tool you can push it around with the spinning tool and sort of tuck it in, but another tool that's super helpful is a beading tool where it has kind of a recessed curvature, right there, recessed curvature in the wheel that will grab that rolled edge and tuck it around under into a nice kind of curved end. So you don't have to have this, but it's helpful. So I've trimmed the end. I'm just going to put a little bit of wax on there. Help things along. Let's see how things go. So again, once it kind of gets back around and has that stability there, then I'm feeling pretty good about it not wrinkling in on itself because you have a nice hardened edge here that's maintaining sort of the strength of the whole piece in there. So again, you can keep tucking in with the pliers, and I'll try and get as far as I can with the pliers and then push it the rest of the way. You just kind of, because it's supporting both sides of the metal. So that's most of the way in. And then depending on the curvature that you have and everything, either you can, sorry, let me get a more wax on there to make it not so noisy. So either you can go in this way. Yeah, it's just being too noisy because the aluminum's starting to get a little hardened. So just for the sake of your guys' ears, I'm not going to do that. I'll go with just kind of tucking it in. So just sort of spinning that edge. So it's not embarrassing. That's fine. So just to kind of check how things are going. It's not too bad. And then, so I figured you might be interested in some like down and dirty, quick and easy metal finishing. I mean, metal finishing can be a whole other thing. And so basically with polishing, has anyone used Simichrome on anything? All right, see, you guys already have Simichrome. You are like 95% there. So it's a great general purpose polisher. Not something you want to use on like your like antique silver teapot or anything, but for what we're doing here, it's perfectly fine. If you have deep gouges, of course, metal finishing and wood finishing at the beginning stages can be very similar. So you have some deep gouges and you're going to do sanding. Now, I mean, I learned wood turning from John Jordan, who like doesn't believe in sanding. So that's a whole other, I know that's a whole other school of thought. So he's like Mr. Gouge. So, but if you're going to get into sanding, then of course you go from the rougher grits down to the finer grits. I don't think I gouged this too horrifically, so I'm just going to go in straight with Simichrome and just kind of give it a not entirely embarrassing finish on there. You can, again with the lathe, you can get in. Does anyone have polishing buffs set up on their lathe? I was sort of curious about that. Couple people. So with polishing buffs, the next level beyond just sort of smearing Simichrome all over that is you can get different polishing buffs, and they have them in like Jewelry Supply and everything else. And they have arbors that hold them, and then you can, I just put them in a chuck, put it on there, and then it spins just like a polishing machine, and you can polish up units. Now, I like to polish the piece while it's on the lathe rather than taking the piece off and hand polishing it. So we'll just do a quick little Simichrome on this guy. Get this out of the way. Sorry. Good thing you moved. Smart man. I'll owe you the dry cleaning bill there. But, you know, Simichrome does, you know, for like a cheap little polishing compound, it does a really nice job really quickly. So like I said, it's a little too aggressive for like fine silver and things like that, and sort of in the metalworking, metalsmithing world, it's sort of like, it's not really like the way to finish it, but who cares? It does a nice job. Works for me. So, we haven't had too many trains interrupt things here. Yes?
Have you ever just hit with sandpaper, leave around?
Oh, like on purpose? Like leave little...
Yeah, like, 80 grit or something like that.
Sure, sure.
And just leave it that way and then polish that?
Yeah, you certainly could. You can have all sorts of different sort of finishing effects, and I wanted to leave a difference between sort of the inside metal versus the Simichrome outside. And I'll pass it around while it's fresh off the lathe and still a little warm from all the friction and things like that. But I mean, it's not too bad. If I cut down on the chit chat, I could have probably banged that out in 10 minutes or something. And the nice thing I like about this and sort of the backspinning on it is it still gives you an eye as far as you're looking at the curvature and really making decisions, as opposed to just like cranking this out and being a factory worker. And I could have probably tucked the little rolled edge in a little bit more, but I mean, for a stocking stuffer, it's fine, Like I said, it's not entirely embarrassing. So a related thing that isn't, okay, so PDF promo-wise, what's the best way to show this? Like here, is this best?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through all this because, we've talked our way through this. But like I mentioned, I have these PDFs up on my website. You're welcome to go to it. Just download whatever you're interested in. Most of these are from some older books. All of the technology still applies. I wish I could do technical drawings like this. I just think there's a beauty to them that is fantastic. So these are all there, and they're really great as far as specifications, measurements on tools and things. So talks about some things that I covered, some other things that I didn't. There is like the centering stick and things like that. So those are all there. I also did a little technical article here, metal splitting for wood turners. Whoop. I want to go this way? Ah. Yeah, I don't have a stage monitor, so this is even easier. So
I know we're dense people, but that's too far.
all right. And so this little article, if you're curious, I was debating about doing that demo, but I demoed like little cowboy hats, but it comes into some other punching and things like that. So if you want to see the cowboy hats from the Metal Spinning for Wood Turners article, I have those. The chuck for that is significantly smaller. Sort of looks like a pilgrim's hat, and then it gets like punched down and everything. But that's that one. And The other thing that is not entirely related to metal spinning, but I thought definitely for the wood turning audience would be really interesting, is I came across this, this older pewter book, and this guy really got into sort of the analytical nature of like what makes beauty. So how do you decide what curves of your piece look good or not? And he was really looking forward to like, why? Why does this look better than that? And my dad is a retired mechanical engineer, and I know that there's a lot of sort of engineering blood in the wood turning world. And so I figured that there could be some discussions and questions about that, like, how come that looks better than that? So he breaks it down and mathematically with like golden mean stuff and everything else. So if you really want to geek out with numbers and forms and things, this is just I've never seen it, not just related to spinning or wood turning or anything else, but I've never seen this kind of mathematical, analytical breakdown of beautiful forms and curves. And it would just be, look, golden mean, numbers, gets into why this handle looks better than the other one. So it could be just a really great thing related to as you're designing your pieces and your forms. So that PDF is up there on the website as well, and it's just from, just want to give credit to the author. So this is from the Pewtering and Design and Construction book by Varnum. Originally, he was a faculty member at University of Wisconsin. I forget what year, but there's the man. Just a good picture of him. So modern pewter at work. So there's lots of additional resources if you do want to get into it. And like I said, I'm a club member, so I'd love to be of assistance for anyone that wants to try this out, or you've tried it a little bit, or you want to make something specific, like, well, I do want to have something come to a point. How do I do that? Things that we just can't get into tonight. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. So, and then, you know, once we're sort of done and going about our business, feel free to take pictures of anything. The one other thing I wanted to mention, like the weird rough tool that I have over there with the rollerblade wheel, I was interested in exploring to see if you could texture metal, like etch metal, and then spin it without rubbing out the texture. I don't know if you've ever seen those little like copper cowboy hat ashtrays. I sort of collected those for a long time. Most of those are spun and then hammer formed, but I had one that was etched and spun. And so the rollerblade wheel actually pushes the metal around and spins it without rubbing out texture. So I kind of get on these side little exploratory projects to just, gee, I wonder if you can do that. Well, this is how you would. So that's what the whole roller tool is with the rollerblade wheel there. So I think that's a little taste of things, and there's really lots more, just like with wood turning. I mean, you can just keep going and keep going. So that's a little glimpse into the window, and hopefully I can be of help in the future. So.